Hey, welcome back everyone to another devlog on Carry Me Melody. So I'm finally getting around to putting stages into the game, to designing level layouts. I had some test levels just to test the art, but I wasn't actually ready to design levels yet, but I'm finally getting around to that. And in this video, I want to show you how I do it. So if I press escape, it opens up the editor. I recently revamped this editor, so it might seem a bit different than you're used to. But yeah, I'll just go over it real quick. If we go to the right here, it's the entities tab, and here you can inspect all the entities, kind of like the inspector in Unity. So for example, if we right click this thing, we can inspect it. It's this little collectible here. And you can change all the properties and you can add components and stuff like that. Then at the top here, there is all the tile brushes. So you can select a brush, for example, the ground, and you can draw ground like this. And you can also erase it. And then at the top right here, there are all the different layers. So there's different layers. For example, this bush is behind the player, and this ground is on the first layer. And then down here you can see the timeline editor, which I recently made. This is a tool to make cutscenes. I know you can use scripting to make cutscenes, but I wanted to have some sort of visual editor, and there's some really cool things in this timeline that I haven't seen anyone do, so I want to show you a bit of that. So first of all, I'll just show you the cutscene that I made with this timeline. So let's press the play button and the cutscene will play. So you can see Melody is kind of falling down into these bushes. Then she jumps out and kind of looks around, kind of confused. So the way this works is there are different tracks here, one for the player, for the event. You can just name these tracks whatever you want, and then these squares are frames. So let's zoom in a little bit. You can see this frame starts at 0.0 and ends at around 1.1 or something, I guess. And if you look at this spot here, you can see some information. So this is a transformed timeline frame, which just means this frame puts something somewhere. So if we right click this frame, you can see it's the timeline frame. The target is player substitute. Don't mind the name, that's something I still need to work on. But yeah, you can see all the values, the start value and the end value. In this case, I put her up at Y250, which just means I put her up in the air. So when the cutscene plays, you can see she kind of spawns in the air and then she falls down. So I'll play it one more time with the timeline open. It kind of obscures the player, but you can see the playhead moves and it kind of stops here for a while. And you might be thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. Why would that happen? Is it a bug? But actually that's intentional, and that's the cool feature I wanted to talk about. So if we zoom in a little bit more, you can see this frame is an emitter observer frame. That sounds kind of weird, but basically what it is, it listens for an event. And in this case, it listens for the event 1, which is the value for when the player touches the ground. So if we inspect this frame, I need to zoom in a little bit more. You can see, yeah, it's an emitter observer of 1, and it has the boolean here blocking, which means it blocks the timeline from progressing until this frame is complete. So what this does is the timeline plays, Melody falls down, and then it waits with the rest of the timeline until she hits the ground. And this is really useful in some dynamic cutscenes, because sometimes you want to do something and you kind of want to wait till something's completed. So I'll kind of show you what the other frames do. So this is our function call frame, and this is what's making the player jump. So if we go here, you can see she does a little jump. Then this frame makes the player walk between 2 points, so from 71 till 51, and here she walks again. So that's when she walks around kind of confused. I can kind of scroll through it. I don't think it actually works when you... Oh, it does work. Yeah, you can see when you scroll through the timeline, she's moving like this. And this actually also puts the walking animation. That's just what this frame does. So it might be useful to jump into the code. So this is the timeline class. You can see it has a bunch of values, but it has these tracks here. So if we go into that, you can see the track has a list of frames, a timeline frame. So then we go into here, you can see timeline frame. It has a duration, a start time, frame ID, and then it also has some descriptions and stuff for the editor. But there's also a timeline value frame, and this is kind of where the power of this tool comes. So there's a start value and an end value, and then when the frame is entered, it calls onFrameEnter and it sets the start value. And then there's an onFrameExit, so when the frame is exit, then it sets the end value as well. So let's just go into the transform timeline frame. That's kind of straightforward. So you can see it extends the timeline value frame with a type of a vector2. So the values it uses are vectors. And you can see onFrameEnter, it does some stuff as usual. And when set value is called, it just sets the value. But the important thing is this apply progress. So this is called every frame that the timeline frame is active. So you can see it has the start value and it has the end value. And then it kind of looks at the time into the frame, and then it kind of lerps between those two values. So if we go back into the game, so if we look at this walking frame here, it starts at x58 and it ends at x82. So if we slowly go through that, the further we go into the frame, the further the player moves towards that end value. And you can use this for anything, not just the transform tool. You can use this maybe to rotate something, or you can use this to make something grow. This timeline system is really powerful and you can pretty much just animate anything. So I'm talking about this timeline thing way too long. I want to show you one last thing. How do you actually make the frames? Well, you can just kind of drag one like this, and then you can choose which one you want to make. But the most useful way is to use this observer. So for example, we choose this time we want to do something here, and I'm not sure what we want to do, but we want to do something at this time at 2 seconds, 0.57. You just pull the player inspector here and you say observe, and now it's looking for any value that gets changed. For example, I don't know, let's put the velocity to something. Let's put the velocity to 2, minus 2, minus 4. Yeah, I think that moves the player up. And you can see it made a frame here, a retro rigid body velocity frame. So let's play the timeline and see what that does. So now it reached this frame and the player kind of moved up because of this velocity frame. And just to show you that this actually works, let's also add some X velocity. So let's add, I don't know, 5, and let's play it again and see what happens when it reaches this frame now. Yeah, and now she jumps forward, which is really cool. And you can see you can just add all these frames everywhere and kind of make a cutscene. So in this case, maybe we want to make a cutscene where the player shoots forward. You can use this timeline system. Hey, Aintorn from the future here. The timeline stuff turned out a bit long and I don't want to put people through a 20-minute long video, so I'm gonna split the next section about designing the levels into a new video, so please check that video out.